Yep.
You guys.
Let's see.
How to train your brain. And then we're kind of going more in depth on the same topic from last week, and taking chaos to order is the title. So we're going to get into more of the details of how to do this, how to use whiteboards, how to put your brain up on the wall, and everything we've been talking about. We're going to go into depth. We've got our props ready.
So what's interesting is we got this image looking back in lip number 2. We had shared this image. It's a common image that's shown to define either coaching, life coaching, professional coaching, or even when you go see therapists. The idea that our mind is so filled with chaos that it often takes the aid of somebody else who's able to listen to you and oftentimes regurgitate back to you what you said, which sounds kind of silly, but that's what happens. If you truly can dump out what's in your head, someone listens and repeats back, those usually are people we value. And the world of therapists, the world of professional coaches has literally gone hockey stick vertical in terms of business. However, the challenges also has gone even faster growth. So there's a component where the way I think we look at it, there is not enough great coaches in the world, not enough great therapists, and the need for this, not 1 hour a week, not 3 times a week, 5 times a week, you need someone almost all the time. Meaning you're never going to be able to fulfill the rate and the speed that the chaos in our mind occurs for someone to help unravel it. And so there are other aids that you can create. And so we're going to talk a lot about using the wall, the physical setup of the wall, so that you can imagine being able to do this for yourself. That's the skill we want you to build, because we all have the left side. We need to get to the right side. So that's what we're going to actually spend some time on in this session. So quick thing, we break up the presentation into 3 parts, quick announcements, and then the main lesson, how to train your brain to go from chaos to order, right? The kind of self-driven, self-tools, strategies and tools. And then a workshop, which if you don't have a lot of questions, we can easily go into last week's chat, and we have a lot of good things from there. So a lot of stuff. For those of you who are new, the class I know is scheduled for 11:45. We run over typically. So we try to cover the full lesson at least within the hour, which is usually me talking too much. So I try every week to practice this. And then, but we're here till 12:30. So questions and stuff, usually there's a pretty lively audience here as well. So please feel free to stay.
As we always remind you, it's not a cult. You can leave when you need to leave. And
it's the beauty of Zoom.
Watch the video
just
later.
end and we won't even know you're gone, right? And we won't,
we'll know you're gone. We'll feel a little sad, but you know.
But not that sad. Okay. So like, once again, use chat aggressively, talk to everyone, but we'll go into this. All right, so quick thing on announcements. I actually did not have much here except for an update on the Dev GPS, Developmental GPS. It's the term we used for the modern day way to evaluate a human being. When I say evaluate a human being, the most classic way organizations evaluate human beings is your annual performance evaluation. Some people, have a 360. Some people have all kinds of other ways, but in the military, they call it a fit rep. I think it comes back, originating way back into the physical world where you have to meet certain fitness requirements, which you still have to do to stay in the military. There's different bars for different ages. So the actual performance evaluation of what keeps you promoted and all the good stuff is called a fit rep. Spend a lot of time in organizations, in corporations and military groups, helping them review and look at the way they evaluate human beings. Mm-hmm. There is a massive change occurring where human beings, no different than when you look at schools, public schools, private schools, we're still evaluated on the last 100 years, the 20th century, otherwise known as the industrial age. And performance, when you think of human beings, is seen as I hire you or I bring you on and kind of, I get what I hired. If I hired you, that's it. Now, the one area that does not think this way is sports teams. Mm-hmm. Sports teams bring on drafts and rookies all the time, but they're looking for people with the highest coachability, the rookies who could one day become the LeBron Jameses, one day become the Tom Brady's, the people who would literally will rise, and faster they rise, even better. And so that notion of a performance evaluation changing to a learner evaluation, the single most valuable element of human beings is actually their ability to learn and grow. Mm-hmm. And so when you do grow, it's usually what they refer to as being in the flow. And they say most people are lucky to get even a few hours of flow in a week, sometimes in a month, and you spend the rest of the time trying to get back into that flow. How do you know if it's working? How do you measure it? Developmental GPS is probably a culmination of almost 2 decades of our work and work with other people to figure out a way to measure it. So we're going to go into this in a little bit more detail here, and then the team is ready to show you the first version of the web app, which you can use, and we'll show you how to score yourself as well. So this slide's a little bit busy. I'm going to break this down, but on the left, we spent part of the week working with a 2-star general at the Pentagon, going into details, walking him through, and he had major breakthroughs as we discussed this. But I'm going to walk you through kind of this sheet on the left broken up into pieces. So, and by the way, you're like part of our human laboratory. When I say human laboratory, this is the 42nd week that Megan and I have been teaching this leadership in practice class. The way we started it in the beginning, when we started COA, the first week of lockdown, the reasons we began COA as an entire program was for many different reasons, but it was really for family and our own employees who we saw had a hole of needing fitness, needing, to calm down from the stress of the news and couldn't sleep. But how could we inspire them to work on themselves through leadership? And we even had like the head of medical at an Air Force base come speak and give an update on COVID. And so we started with like a dozen courses with a few hundred, like 100 to 200 people. And in a matter of weeks, it exploded to 100,000 plus people attending in a week. But the other part we saw was we spend quite a bit of money as a company hiring a lot of freelancers, gig workers that run all kinds of programs in a company, good for fitness and nutrition and sleep and children's programs for the employees of our company. And as soon as the pandemic hit, their revenue and income dropped to zero. So we saw this dual need to say, why don't we keep funding and spending what we would spend to run our company, but rather than doing it in person, which we can't, let's do it virtually and open it up beyond just, the benefits of virtual. And had no idea that sharing our culture that way would not only provide a steady stream of income for all those people, we then saw an explosion of interest from all different people. And this is literally the history of how this thing went about. We created LIP because we saw a need to create consistently, high quality content. So felt the need to jump in. We leveraged our network and contacts and brought crazy good speakers in different ways too, which keep coming in. So a little history of that. So this is the 42nd week. But one of the things that Megan and I do is we share what is most relevant, meaning we are experimenting at the highest of levels. And we used every Thursday Lib class. And most people can't believe the content we create. We usually don't put it together starting until Wednesday at 5 o'clock in the evening. Meaning it's not easy trying to spend, all the other days trying to do our work, our business, actually help people we know in our company, outside our company. And then come Wednesday, whatever we learned, we try to share. So this laboratory, this human laboratory is kind of what LIP has created a very high tempo for us. But in the 39th and 40th week, we had a major breakthrough in this lab. One was this notion that we are what we measure. You'll see this everywhere, right? Whatever an organization, whatever an individual measures, you end up doing. So measurement becomes key. The other one is the design and the setup of an organization actually dictates what shows up. This idea of are we made, so are we born or are we made? The idea that we are more influenced and made by our environment than we realize. And that is the power of leadership, to design the organization. But almost every organization, no matter the industry, is measuring on a 20th century performance mindset and is designed to actually drive that as well. Meetings and stand-up meetings, everything. I think about authority figures, think about factories in the best sense. Factories are built with a performance mindset of top supervisor or boss, and everyone must just, I don't really care about your opinion, clock in, do your repeated work, like that whole mindset. And that's how schools got built and everything, a lot of history there. How that needs to upgrade to the 21st century, where the new asset now is no longer land or machines, but people. And that means this number one asset is most valuable when it's in a learning mindset. The researchers found, if you study organizations, the highest performing organizations, no matter the industry, ironically does not have a performance mindset, they have a learning mindset. And when you're in the highest form of learning, it's what they call the flow. When you're in the flow, it's like mistakes and everything, you are just constantly notching up. And it was interesting because I was reading this series of tweets by this guy who had worked for both Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, so Amazon and Facebook. And he talked about what a learning mindset both of them had. By the time someone accomplished something, they want to celebrate, they're already moving on to the next topic and moving so fast. And they were talking about how the two of them were incredibly obsessive on products, down to every detail, kind of like Elon Musk is with Tesla and why the cars have the thing. Now, I was thinking about, actually, Megan and I reading that.
Yeah.
If there's one area that is our jam, right? Our specific knowledge that we obsess about, it's on human performance, on figuring out how to elevate, how to fix, how to re-get people on track on human performance at every level. This is our jam, and this is what we in every detail think about. And so as a result, over the years, attracted the who's who. But what you see on the left is a diagram of, basically, we shared this in one of the earlier LIP classes. This is the way the new organization has to be designed. 3 types of training. Everyone needs resiliency training, and I'll go into that in more detail why. Leadership training, which usually is seen as strategy training, and then followership training. And despite us being in the new 21st century, no longer the industrial age, every leadership document will talk about every leader also needs to know how to be a great follower. Great leaders are also great followers, and they know how to move between the 2 states. And so you need both. And so we'll go into a little bit of that. And then on the right side is this developmental GPS, which we initially, in our confusion, thought it was a hexagon. It's a pentagon, actually, which has nothing to do with the military work we do. But it's a 5-pronged way to score how to think of development and how to score on the 5 spectrums that matter most. 1 and 2, I want you to think of it as thinking. Thinking has to do with trying to look forward into the future or look backwards into the past. 3, 4, 5 has to do with the present time now and what to action. So let me walk you through this in a little bit more detail. But looking at resiliency, here was an interesting discussion we had with this 2-star general in the Pentagon that we thought would be interesting to share, which was why resiliency training. There are 2 main reasons why resiliency training matter a lot. And COVID really showed every organization this matters even more than before. The first reason is that everybody is in their heads. We are so in our heads everywhere. And this acronym, we love acronyms, OOTH means out of their heads. One of the top challenges as leaders is to get people out of their heads. And so any program and whatnot, how do I do that? And the mental health crisis, which has now become the #1 actual cost in healthcare costs for almost all organizations, is tied to mental health. The worst of mental health leads to suicide, which we have had to help and work with a lot in the military. But mental health and the suicide numbers, by the way, are super scary. Yeah. Children at 7 and 8 years old for mental health reasons.
And it was already there, and it was already there before COVID hit, right? So now you add COVID to it, and the numbers are exploding. So the mental health crisis is not going away; it's just getting 10 times worse.
And there's been all kinds of conflicting things, even with COVID, saying introverts and people who were bullied at school have preferred COVID and this ability. It's harder to get bullied in Zoom versus when you're at school, like sitting in the cool table or whatnot. None of that stuff. But then there's the flip side of it. They've had kids going crazy because they're not interacting with other kids.
Isolation.
Right? The isolation.
They're so lonely, yeah.
And it's fascinating where if you think about in prisons and the punishment they do, solitary is the top punishment. We spend time with people who have had and been part of AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous. The top reason people drink is because they feel alone and nobody needs them.
And I agree with you, Carl, as she's saying that more people are reaching out for help, so the stigma is decreasing. And I agree with you, the stigma is decreasing, but not fast enough for enough people.
Every metric is like hockey sticking up on the cost of mental health everywhere. And so we had this whole discussion of like, why is that happening? And the top thing, it's interesting, this notion of being judged, right? It feels awful to be judged by another human being. And yet we do it all the time too, whether we do it out loud or secretly. You go on the internet, it's massive. But when there was a speaker we had, Sri Kumar, who was a business school professor in Columbia, talked about this notion of a second arrow. The first arrow is bad stuff that just happens in life. Life is tough enough that bad things will come at us. Sometimes it feels like it's pouring like rain. Other times you get a random, like, prick somewhere, like there's arrows coming whichever way. The arrows of life, painful. But there's a second arrow. And the second arrow is only shot by one person in our lives. And it's only hitting one target. Only you can fire the second arrow, and the only person it hits is yourself. He talks about how the second arrow is so much more painful than the first arrow. It is often 10 to 100 times more lethal and painful and crippling than the first arrow. There is nobody who is a bigger critic, a worse judge of yourself than yourself. And when you look at the research and all the studies, and I think what happened with social media was this. When you see Kim Kardashian or a celebrity on private jets and going away to private island vacations when you're stuck in your home, that's okay in some ways because it's unreachable. But through social media, the people we now see are people we know. As soon as you see a name or a face you recognize who might have actually had access to a private jet or something and whatnot, that's when you feel judged. And who's judging? It's you judging yourself. Because they say the true score of happiness, when you look at people, is actually in comparison. It's this idea of always being graded on a scale. We feel good or bad, richer or not, happy or not, relative to the people we know. So when you actually see people we know doing better, we feel worse. There's a German phrase, I forgot what it is, where you get pleasure in seeing those you know in pain. Yeah. There's an actual word for it, right? The reality
Becky knows what it is.
What is it? Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude?
Yeah.
Schadenfreude?
So
as I was saying it.
What internet social media has done is it has made us feel like crap. It has made us not read about now celebrities who seem like unreachable people to people we know doing better than us everywhere. Happier than us, better than us. And in the process, we are firing that second arrow at ourselves at a faster rate than anything. And then what's interesting, and I put up there the green box, right? If red is bad, the green, death, right? I know Simon Pierce had his father pass away. Death is one of the most painful things that gets people in their head, right? When you have a loved one you lost, losing a child is even worse. You have literally being in your head, you're quiet, you're subdued, you can't focus on life. And in the research, they talk about this term DASA. It stands for denial, anger, sadness, then acceptance. There's a whole process of how you have to burn off your emotions, and you will get to a place where the pain never goes away, but you can kind of rejoin life back again, the game of life. Another way to put it is bring it to light. The act of sharing with another human being the pain you're suffering through is the very thing that gets you over it. And so when you think about being in your head, that's you being alone, not sharing this with anyone. And then you're firing second arrows at the same rate. If you watch Lord of the Rings, that elf, I forgot his name, he can fire arrows at such a fast speed. It's just firing it at oneself over and over again. But if you're able to do it, at least with one other person and share what's happening, that is the solution.
Is that the name of the person? Right? Legolas?
Oh yeah, Legolas, yes. Awesome character in it. But anyways, one. But the second reason why resiliency training is needed is this. Diversity of thinking is more at risk and more challenged today than ever before. As in, we can't talk to each other, whether it's because of wokeism or cancel culture or everything. If you're not saying what the internet mob wants you to say using the words you should be using, you can't speak. And you can see this notion when teams are together by the speed they speak, how carefully they trim and pick words. When they're speaking slowly, and when people do that, let me think of how to say this. Yeah. Like if they think of how to say it, just say it. Just blurt it out. Right. It's word choice, careful choice. You can't say all lives matter. You have to say Black lives matter. You can't say this. You can't. There's so much of that. And so
you're afraid to say anything because you don't feel safe, right?
Teams thinking out loud.
If you don't feel safe to speak,
is
you can't
actually
think out loud. Think out loud, you can't collaborate. If you can't collaborate, you can't have innovation. It's
the supercomputer of the 21st century actually is not physical computers. It's human brains networked together, working in near real time, going at top speed and sharing thoughts, which means the wrong thoughts will come out based on how we were raised and experience that we have, like all kinds of biases and blind spots and horrible non-PC things will come out. But to find the space, not like talking to 100 people, 1,000 people, but even in groups of 2, 3, 4. And they talk about even with elections and everything now, like families are broken apart and no one can say anything without having everyone hate each other. Like the ability to think out loud with another human being, said another way, talk to each other. We can't truly talk to each other anymore. Diversity of thinking is at risk. And when you combine those two things, because they feed into each other, you have to keep your thoughts to yourself.
Lori is asking, are people their own worst critics, right? Because we seem to know what will hurt ourselves the most. And we had this conversation about myself.
Second arrow.
I'm an expert at second arrowing. I mean, I can, oh God, it's an awful, imbalanced way. And yes, because we know, but then we defend it, but that's the way it is, right? It has to be that way. This is how I am, right? And the more we defend it, the more we're hurting ourselves. And yet, what's the point of that? Now we can't get out of it. We can't act.
And so there are very few organizations that haven't come up with and built some type of resiliency training program, a solution. Many of them go for an afternoon, a day, 3 day, 1 week. We have seen the materials and the depth of as many as you can imagine. We have met with the leaders who have read every research and book on this thing, down to the workings of Jesus, which actually is all around resiliency training. And there are two common themes that show up. They pound principles into people's head, very much like what an industrial age rule set guideline would do. And they try to reframe the way you think, just rewrite the narrative. And when you go and truly audit what difference it made, 30 days after the class, 60 days after the class, there is a approximate near 0% adoption and retention of change actually occurring. People are back in the same place. So we have been working with different groups, including ourselves, to figure out what's a better way to do resiliency training. And there's a key thing we found. 201 is resiliency training, the ability to navigate and have difficult conversations in near real time. Conflicts, navigating conflict, eggshell crushing, dealing with criticism or being able to give it, right? Unpopular, independent point of views put on the table in near real time without the filtering mechanism that we use so much. But what we found was, wait, we couldn't even go into this topic because there was another mechanism that was preventing us from doing it, which is what we called PRT or pre-resiliency training. People first needed to dial down what we call the RABs. RABs stand for red arrow behaviors. Dial down our defense mechanism. In research, it's called our psychological immune system. We have overdeveloped it to protect ourselves. And so before any conflict, eggshell comes to us, we've already put out signals that, you know what, that stuff is a no-go zone in my area. This is the image we use to explain it. Like the people around us, the conversations, the topics, the reaction, the truth they want to send us, this red barrier that we create. I think someone changed it to echo chamber of silence, but I think initially we put echo chamber of BS. We're just left in an echo chamber of BS because we do it so instinctively, we don't even realize. We talked about the two extremes you see is someone who acts very fragile. As you start to talk about something difficult, their eyes are welling up and you look like they're going to be, ashen within seconds. So you stop because you don't want to hurt them. Or someone who's so hostile, you can feel their F-bombs going off and that look in their eyes of wanting to tear you apart for what you're about to say. So you don't go there. And there's many variations of this, but this is a unique muscle we develop in our lives to protect us, but it's also the very thing that prevents us from growing because we can't get the truth. So we launch for that reason, these workshops at no cost for anybody in this class that wants to join. I think there's over 100 people already going actively every week. So I'll give you a second to read what people have said from it, right? So maybe Carla, can you give me a thumbs up once you've read the whole thing? Maybe Carla or Nat, both of you, I can see you on my screen. So
Interesting, Carl is saying, I think of RAB as a muscle. Yeah, it's like a muscle to not do those things.
Right.
It's the dialing down the defense mechanism, right?
And it's a muscle that just, it's like when you get you can hit your knee and then there's like almost a reactive move.
Yeah.
It's so reactive, we don't even realize it's happening. And so how to dial that down.
Yeah.
First, how to recognize it and dial
Yes.
it down.
Yeah.
And I think what we lack as adults and human beings is the space,
Yeah.
otherwise known as the gym, the mental gym, to be able to go do that. Because it doesn't work just because we decide I'm going to dial it down. No. It doesn't work just because you write it down and make a promise to yourself. You need the space to be able to go do that. Mm-hmm. And you need to train it, unfortunately, with other human beings. Yeah. There's no greater machine in actually properly scoring and judging another person than another human being. And so that's the best machine for scoring and judging a human being is another human being. And so that notion of blind spots and whatnot, what PRT does is create the consistent space at no more than 2% of your time, which is around 1 hour a week, to meet with a group of 10 and work on it. So
but this is the really hard stuff though, right? Because this is the stuff that over years you've developed as part of who you are. And so without that, you're gonna fight it and convince others I need to be this way. I mean, I know I do this in different places where it's like, this is how I got to where I am. So it's like tearing that down to figure out what pieces aren't good for you, to stop doing that, to dial that down is a very hard, when it gets real, it should be very uncomfortable.
I think
because it's trying to change your default,
but
so that you stop shooting second arrows, or you stop doing the things that are preventing you from getting the truth that you need.
And the people around you see the truth faster than you can see your blind spots, but they can't give you the truth because you have put red arrows out there to basically say, this is a no-go zone, please don't come
talk to me about that. I don't talk about
and
that.
So how to dial that down so you can let their truth come to you. And in the process, like, truth will guide you to the right place as a human being. But navigating that truth is very hard to do. So with that, we have created a scorecard for the developmental GPS, which people have been asking, and we hand wrote it because we couldn't. And so Laura, maybe someone from the team, whether the video or not, can make a cleaner version. But before I go into this scorecard, we're going to go into detail. I'm going to turn it over to our engineering team, and they're going to demo what they built so that you can go in off of, Perks at Work and use what they built to start to get your own score, and then get others to score you. And eventually it should be 3 people. You have a self-developmental GPS score. You have a peer summarized and average, and then you have your boss or coach or whoever you want to think of. And then the 3 showing together to give you a visual. So actually, I'm turning it over to whoever on the engineering side.
Cool. Thanks, Charlie. So hi, everyone. My name's Krista, and I'll be presenting with Kwang. So we just kind of want to walk you through a demo of the developmental GPS app. So to start, make sure you're logged into your Perks at Work account. And once you're logged in, you can go to your profile in the corner and in a drop-down select Developmental GPS. And so once you're on the page, as a first-time user, you'd likely not have submitted any evaluations just yet. Here, if you have any questions, you can go to the GPS guide, which kind of gives context as to what it's being used for, what the different areas that we are measuring, and kind of how frequently you should be expected to submit an evaluation for yourself and for your peers. I'll just pass over now quickly to Kwang so he can actually go through an example of an evaluation.
Thanks, Krista. So as you can see on the page, there are 4 main actions that you can do. The 3 are, you can either give evaluation to yourself, to your peer or coach, which is a coming soon feature. And I think the most important one, which is to see your own scorecard and how your peer rate you as well. But as you can see, that I cannot see the score at the moment because I haven't completed my self-evaluation. So I will just click on to complete my self-evaluation. And what I will do here is I actually going to copy over an evaluation that I have done manually using on paper to the form. So while I copy, I just like to explain that, at the end of the day, we want to release a mobile app to make sure that it is easy for everyone to use. But why we are starting with a web app is so that we can quickly iterate and improve on the user experience. So please help us try out the app and give us feedback on how to improve. And so as I click submit here, I will go to homepage. And on this page, I can see that how my rating compared to my peer rating. And can see that in measuring progress and speed and boldness, for example, I have measured myself actually more than how my peer has rated me. And I can go into individual tab to actually read through on the score that I've given myself as well as what my peer has given me so that I can identify areas where I can improve. And very similarly, I can give peer evaluation to people in my team. So for example, I can give to Krista by searching Krista and clicking give feedback to give her an evaluation on very similar to how I have done my self-evaluation. And so please help us by giving yourself and your peer feedback and let us know any feedback you have in the feedback app, or alternatively, you can click on this button to actually send emails direct to me and Krista on what you or your thoughts on and any feedback that you have. So thank you very much.
Hey, Krista or Kwong, can you just, I know people are asking, how do I get to it? Can you just go really slow and show them how to get to it real quick?
Yes.
Section of the site.
So as you see on the side, on the top right corner, you can see your user drop-down menu, and within it, you can see Developmental GPS, and that is how you can access it.
So the team is going to be iterating rapidly. They were kind of pissed that last week we didn't let them demo it, which we didn't think it was ready, but I guess they claimed it was ready. But I have my doubts. But like, once again, use it, drive it through. I think the visual ability to see, just taking the test and then having your peer set even just give you some feedback will visually let you see your awareness gaps. The first point is the awareness gaps of how you see yourself versus how others see you. And that's one of the most important things first to be aware of, because that's how we adjust. That's the truth. So the first thing, so can you guys stop sharing so we can share our screen? So I'm going to go back to the presentation. So please give it a run, but I will walk you through now how to score yourself.
And give a little a clap for Krista and Kwong, who hey. These young engineers,
they're good, but like I would have had mobile app by now.
I would have had a mobile. Who's taunting
you. Sorry, no, but it's good. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Oh.
Yes.
Hey, Charlie and Megan, can I add one note?
Yeah, go ahead.
Tom and Lakia here, we work with Kwong for Zip. One thing, when you log in, the people you can give peer feedback to are in your org or in your company right now. What we're adding in is a feature where you can actually you can request to getting feedback from other people. So in particular for like PRT groups. So if you want to give, this type of feedback to people in your PRT groups, that's coming quick. We've already gotten that request.
And actually that would be kind of cool for the PRT groups to not only do a self and then have the peers give as much as you can, but then the coaches of the PRT group also put the feedback in from what they observed. So maybe even after 3 sessions of PRT, there's probably enough information to get an initial score. So let me walk you through what's on the sheet. And so let me walk you through starting from the very top. Expectation. This is a very powerful word. Something that we used in our performance evaluation, I want to say almost 25 years ago. And the reason is this: the word expectation is a human judgment. Expectation of self, expectation of others, or expectation from a coach or a boss. And what's interesting about the word expectation is that it captures in this sense of directional accuracy. You'll notice the difference between measuring a human being versus measuring a machine. Machines get measured with precision. Human beings should need to be measured with directional accuracy. When I see Myers-Briggs and all those tests, and they give you a score that seems too precise, the danger is that we start to believe that's it. I'm set, baked, and that's who I am. Yeah. And we have seen, working with the best in the world and seeing data and metrics, people's personalities can change. Oftentimes when you get promoted, someone who seemed to be on fire and confident becomes insecure shortly after promotion. I mean, there's all kinds of nuances and life events that make different changes in human beings. And that's the aspect of being organic. You're a constantly changing, up or down changing individual. Sports teams, perfect example. No player is on fire all the time. They have trending seasons up, trending seasons down. And that directional accuracy, what you're doing is getting a read of how you judge yourself and expectations, and then how others judge you and what they expect from you, as well as your coaches or bosses. The scoring of 1, 2, 3, 4, very important. Giving a 1 means that they're below expectation. So that's just your judgment of them. Hey, I think you can do better. You're below that. Another way to say it is, what I see you do, say in any one of these 5 traits, you're going the wrong way. It's your way of saying, hey, wrong direction. Number 2 is meeting expectation. That's saying you're going the right way. However, there's a but. It's likely unsustainable. Meaning that if I look 6 months out, I'm not sure like this discipline or this change will be there. You're doing it too intensely. I know we've all seen people say in workouts or diets where they like, ooh, I lost 10 pounds, but I haven't eaten for a week, right? And you're like, that's not going to be sustainable. So a 2 is saying, hey, right way, but likely unsustainable. 3 is when you see them do what we call a system upgrade. They have the practice, the rituals in place that they're upgrading. And so you like a 3. A 4 is far exceeding expectations. Now, this is all relative. Within my organization, you are the model example on this trait. And that's how you score 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what you're always trying to score is the default. Think of the default version of the person, not the one-off best. We often will talk about, I am so kind. Every Christmas after I get bonus, I am so generous and kind. That's not your default. That's the one-off. How are you on an everyday basis? When you think about yourself in a given month, 4 weeks, what is the majority default that occurs? The basic scoring, if you get a 1 across all 5 traits, that's below expectations, you get a 5. And if you score less than 10, so even up to 9.9 something, you're below expectations. 10 to 15, a little less than 15 is meeting expectations, right? That's an average of 2, pretty say 2 up to 3, but less than 3, 15 to 20, and then 20 would be like you are the model example of all 5, right? So that's the score range. But then I put this 3 different traits here because these are the 3 worst scores that usually come out. Someone who's a novice, right? Someone who has kind of like the beginnings of being like, whether it's a new hire or whatnot, can oftentimes score 1 across all 5. That novice, interestingly, is better off and a coachable, faster learner than the 2 traits on the right. Now, these are 2 theoretical traits. The armchair professor, top traits at the very top, 4 and 4, suggest that they're all focused on thinking. The top 2 traits are thinking driven. The bottom 3 traits are doing driven. So all thinking, no doing, that scores an 11. The armchair professor, which I think we know some of those people in our lives. The other one is the micro tactician. The micro tactician is no thinking, all doing. Another way to think of a micro tactician, they love to be micromanaged. They love micro instructions. They love when people check in with them more often and give them step-by-step instruction. And what we have found in most organizations, over 95% of people, if not more, are actually more towards micro tacticians because of the industrial age. Every org design and every form of measurement has actually produced more micro tacticians, and the leadership of most companies are frustrated that just use your head. I know I wanted this, but you went forward and something was different, new information. Why didn't you adjust? Oh, because that wasn't in the instructions. They were talking about even at the Pentagon, there is a mandate, actually, instructions of how to use your mask, right? like specific instructions. And people were complaining about instructions missing.
There's like some little thing missing. I mean, at the like senior level, it's like, just put on the mask and use it right. And
this is not the most complicated thing in the world.
What's an SOP, Carla? Right? We know there's the MDMP, the decision-making process. There's like a process for how to do decision-making. Standard operating procedure.
I mean, like if you ever had to swaddle a new baby, I mean, that stuff needs instruction, like demo visually of every sort. I mean, that stuff is freaking hard to do. It's like a burritoing baby. But using the mask should not be as difficult as that. But we're talking about the most senior generals in the Pentagon sitting down, complaining about instructions missing in the instruction on how to wear a mask.
Can I just, Chris, you're asking something interesting, Chris, that I can't quite think about until I stop for a second. But I think it's similar to the feedback app Wave he's quoting. Would you expect to see the same fluctuation in the dev GPS metrics? Meaning initial thinking is that this would be more stable and increasing over time as you continue developing. But I'm curious of how to think of this. Maybe is it too because I think Simon's mentioning these other spider evaluation tools that we used to do a 360 diamond evaluation. I feel the thing that's unique about this is that we're trying to measure and identify your awareness, and awareness is the truth, right? Your awareness of what you think, peers, coaches, is really important. And that's not like a new phenomenon, awareness, but I think most people just dismiss that too fast. Awareness, but in doing it more consistently, like every 8 to 12 weeks, probably not too much, not too little, but also the imbalance. This is where I think it's getting at Chris's question around an imbalance. To grow and improve, you will get imbalanced. And I think this is a really hard lesson to learn, that you will get, as you're learning to use your brain more and do more thinking and less execution and less micromanagement, you're going to do worse before you do better, maybe across the board, right? It might impact your ability to get done, the doing, while you're upgrading the thinking. So you're going to see, so I think this is where it's going to be really hard for people to kind of accept that it's not just you're going to keep getting better and better, like that you do worse before you do better. You grow and then you do worse as you're trying to learn a new skill, and then you go back up, and it's like this constant.
But the part of, if you look, why the 2 red boxes in Armchair Professor Micro Tactician is this is the idea of the RAB, our defense mechanism. Yeah. It's harder to unlearn than learn.
It's harder to
unlearning is harder. And often when you feel that you have succeeded because I'm so good at following instruction and getting whatever the boss wants done, unlearning the very thing that promoted you and got you to where you are is one of the hardest things to do. It feels like you're letting go of your brain's asset and just saying, okay, I'm going to drop my whole reason for succeeding in my career. I'm going to let that go in order to relearn. And that's very hard to do.
Yeah. Lindsay's saying sometimes unlearning takes digging into your belief system. Absolutely. Like your beliefs, your values, how I got here. But
can I tell you that, to that question? Yeah. I tell you, that's less than you think. People have overdone if I go into your belief system and get the narratives out, but I can basically just change your mind if I can just rewrite your belief and what you're doing. That's not how human beings change. And this is the notion of that default versus your willpower. Willpower is the weakest muscle. It's 5%. 95% of what we do is tied to our automatic, our rituals, our defaults. And so that ends up being the bigger agent of change than any type of story, narrative, lecture thing you can do. You need to get into the practice. So with that, right, what this tool does is, unlike other evaluation systems, it's focused on coachability, on learning, on getting better, not on how you did score-wise performance. There is a difference. A lot of things are looking at, how do I pay you more, right? Or how do I bonus you now? How do I give you more equity, whatever that might be? How do I promote you? And what we found over the years is the single most important trait we screen for in recruiting is coachability. The person who is more coachable is the most valuable asset as an individual, because they will outgrow and outpace somebody else who is hard to coach. The 2 red boxes are people that are harder to coach because they're fighting and defending their turf of trying to stay that way. So if you look at the bottom 5 traits, there's 5 red boxes, 5 green. And the reason is GPS stands for 2 things, because they're the same thing, opposite sides of the same coin. One is growth prevention scorecard. The other one is growth propulsion scorecard. The very same thing, if you do it well, will propel your growth. Propulsion. But the very same thing done wrong will prevent you from growing. So think about the worst individual in your team or organization, and they will sound like this. They lose direction most of the time. In a given month, they have questions like, why bother? Why are we doing this? They feel directionless. They lose perspective. Losing perspective is saying everything in the past sucked or everything in the past was amazing. Like, it's not balanced thinking. Or they kind of don't even remember. What do you mean the past? It's almost like they act like a goldfish. Like, what? I did that? I don't remember that.
No memory.
There's the other one, which is no discipline on the hard stuff. They can be disciplined in playing video games. They can be disciplined in going out on every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but they can't be disciplined on the hard stuff to improve. And I'm not talking about the physical side for your body of exercise or nutrition or sleep. I'm talking about the mind stuff, the stuff that discipline and the hard stuff for your brain. They slow roll and are meek. When you say, oh, do something, they go really slow. Procrastination is top of the list. And when they do it so meekly. You know, you said to do this exercise and try this twice a week. They're like, you know what? I'm going to find a way to do it in half a couple of weeks from now. LHF is a term Megan coined years ago, which I've seen a lot of other people use now, including some of the best TED Talk speakers. It stands for lying, hiding, or faking. Said another way, you're obscuring the truth. And this goes both ways. I obscure the truth going from me to others, but then others are actually obscuring it to me, right? So if you find an individual who's losing direction constantly, losing perspective, no discipline in the hard stuff, slow roll and meek, almost anything they do, and they're covered and surrounded by LHF, I can guarantee they will not do well. If not in the short term, very soon, right, they will fail. On the flip side, someone who has a good North Star is able to go into the future and see both the good and bad, is able to measure progress, looking backwards, good and bad, is discipline in the hard stuff, speed and boldness, right? No LHF, near real-time transparency. But the scoring of this matters, meaning the top two imbalance matters. The bottom three sequence matters. The order of how you score yourself and train matters. So I'll give you an example. In future outlook, when you don't have a clear view into your future, the visible future, and it's really fuzzy and you keep it fuzzy, either good or bad is not good. Meaning, oftentimes we tend to be skewed optimists and pessimists. So one side, I might have a clear good, but a fuzzy bad, so I'll get a +1. So 1 is the starting point, +1 will make me a 2. Megan tends to have a clearer bad, but fuzzy or good, she'll get a 2 also. But if you are agile enough to get clarity in both good and bad, you get a +1, a +1, which gives you a 3. Same in measuring progress. When you look backwards and someone says, so how'd it go? Like, how did that project go? How'd you do? Yeah. How was your career? And you go into, it was terrible all the way through. I'm the worst luck. Everything in my life has worked poorly. Well, and they can articulate the details. That's a clear bad, but fuzzy good. You just get a +1. The order doesn't matter, but over time, imbalance matters. You need to be able to get both. Because you can imagine someone who is a pessimist all the way through, looking backwards and forwards, usually will not want to do anything. And someone who's an optimist, looking backwards and forwards, does a lot of reckless and crazy acts, never gated. They think they're always right. And the bottom three, sequence matters. Sequence meaning discipline comes before focusing on making it hard. A lot of times people think, I just want something really hard, and they never start. Discipline is the ability to build a ritual and get the ritual going. And the right rhythm usually is trying something twice a week minimum, right? Not maximum, but minimum, and try to hold that for 12 to 13 weeks. That's discipline. That gets you from 1 to 2. Then you make it hard as you start to build the discipline, and that gets you to 3. The idea of speed, moving and acting with speed gets you from 1 to 2, and then you focus on making it bold. If you flip it around, it's not going to work because you'll never even start, because bold decisions are really hard to do. So you have to first practice speed before you get to boldness. Said another way at the bottom, the no LHF. It's dangerous to be your authentic self and just share what's on your mind with anybody, which is why you start with 1 to 2 people before you get to many people. So this is just a baseline scorecard of how to score yourself and then how to score others when you use the Dev GPS. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Can we enlarge the slide?
This is the largest we have, but you know what? So everyone, if you're joining the PRT groups, by the way, the coaches can access the slide and get you the actual copy of it. So join a PRT group. Take the thing, and maybe even Kwong and those guys.
They're going to link to this.
You can link to this.
On the GPS. We're going to create a video. It's all happening.
Laura's going to drive a team to make a better version of it that's easier to read than the handwritten version. Although my handwriting is great. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. Simon Priest is saying the problem is trying to learn too much at once and have too many things that you want to master. Right. So this is where it should show you what in what sequence you need to work on, where you're most imbalanced. Where
is it thinking or doing?
Thinking or doing.
Then within each one, there's components that matter. Are you too much of a pessimist? You need to learn to be an optimist. Do you look backwards and forwards and see only negative, but I need to see some positive? Like, or you know what? Like I tend to look for big ideas and good ideas, but never start. Right. So the idea. It's interesting, even before you get the speed, you got to work on discipline, then make the discipline harder. Then you work on getting the big idea with speed and boldness. And same thing, I can't talk to people. I have no one I can really confide in. Well, don't start with everybody. Don't start with a large crowd. Start with 1 or 2 people and so forth. So we'll go into more of this over time, but this hopefully will be the beginnings of it. Okay, so going from this, I'm going to take you through, I know it's much later than I thought it would be. Quick lesson. So I want to go more in depth on the developmental GPS. Number 3 and 5, discipline and the hard stuff, plus the no LHF, which is another word for transparency. This is the same lever. This is the today action item that actually is true for either followership or leadership training. It's what people will need, but the contents of it change. And remember that taking the developmental GPS and getting a peer doing it will give you awareness visually fast. And that's the first part of the training, getting awareness. Probably no more than once a month, but usually every 2 to 3 months is probably the right rhythm. If you overdo it, you can eventually just get good at cheating the test. Yeah, you get good That's at not the point. Test, but the training number 3 and number 5 on leadership breaks into 2 key parts, and that's what I wanted to go into. I know we're kind of really late on time. But so if those of you who have to go, it'll be on video by tomorrow at noon, so you can watch the video. But we're talking about 2 things that matter, and we're going to focus on the leadership side. Mind setup, which is tied to your walls, and then brain speed. How to speed up and train how you think, talk, and write at the same time, which is the training you need to be able to operate where when we're in the presence of other people, and especially in big rooms and meetings, you feel judged, our brain just shuts down and then we can't operate at top speed. How do you train your brain at top speed? And then how do you have the aid of a wall, the setup for you to be able to think more strategically, right? We're talking about, when it comes to strategy, there's no leader we've met that doesn't either say, I suck at strategy, or you know what, I could get better at strategy. Leaders generally, a lot of times, don't like to admit any type of faults, right? Less people don't follow them. But the one area that we have consistently found, no matter the industry,
I could get better at strategy.
Everyone,
yes, I could get better at that.
So you're going to see us take real work we did just in the last week, and we're going to share. So some of you may already be here. So thank you for letting us use you as an example. But here is the first thing to read. Comment from an OMM from one of our mentees in the group we coach. We do executive coaching every week at 3 o'clock. Let you read this really quick. Maybe Kwong, give me a thumbs up once you read it. Actually, you don't need to read all of it, but the part I highlighted was most important. Like I showed in the very cover page, our mind is a twisted knot of thoughts. You need to get that thought out so you can see it. And the single most important place to see it is your wall. And I'll show you actual examples of people, executives we're coaching, non-next jump, outside executives. And some of you have said, how do I, you guys are in person, virtual. I'm talking people working virtual that we're coaching as well. And we'll walk you through how the wall is a file structure for your thoughts. And I'm going to walk you through even what you use for markers and colors matter, because you're able to take this chaos and make it into order. So this is one of the people we coached literally in the last 5 days, right? This is a high-level executive in a finance firm, her home office she set up, right? Very classic, right? You might as well get the view looking out the window, right? And then on the right, you've got an inspirational poster, right? In a world where you can be anything, be kind, right? Then you've got some other inspirational stuff, doors and whatnot. This is the layout of the room, right? And this is the starting point of what we did. And all the change, by the way, I'm going to walk you through, occurred in a matter of like 24 to 48 hours. But you know what I was thinking is interesting? This idea of sitting at a desk, staring out the window. Where the hell did that come from? Right? Because I'll show you another desk for another leader we have, where you have the desk where when people come to your office, it's almost like going to the principal's office, right? Like, or the supervisor's office.
Yeah.
Like, meaning this idea that staring out into blank space will help my mind be more creative, more thoughtful, deal with the stress of all the chaos in my head, right? Staring out at the blank space literally makes you more stressed. So the very first thing we did was help move the desk. Don't stare out the window. And it sounds counterintuitive. Move the desk and your visual eyesight. Where is the largest canvas in the room where you want to be able to see that canvas? Because when our mind is trying to process and think about so many opposing different things, but they all connect in some odd way, because the one connection is you. Everything that you're working on, parenting, home, work, everything has one flavor tied, which is you. You are the common ingredient. And so can I see the connective nature of what I'm doing? And so the largest canvas was right in front. So alter the room to go this way. Then the next thing in action was taking an 8x11 piece of paper and making a blueprint of how to use the wall. The boxes on the left represents that it can fit up to, what does it say? 6 sheets in essence. And then start to make an outline, because if you do an outline in the giant wall, it'll be dizzying. You do it in an 8x11 piece of paper, and you can do it faster before you set up that wall.
Yeah. It's interesting, Simon is saying it's a thing called use your head, a guy, and it's called mind mapping, which makes sense, right? It's like trying to put a map of your mind up on the walls. I don't think the elephant was on purpose for the elephant cheetah. Maybe she'll get a cheetah. Is the elephant in the room on purpose?
Where's the elephant in the room? Oh.
Where's the elephant in the room?
The
elephant in the room.
The
Is that
I hope not, but things happen to people's subconscious, so we might need to buy a cheetah doll to now replace it. Or at least,
but you know the idea of what's the elephant in the, is there's an elephant in the room?
There's an elephant in the room, okay. Or you know what, I would love to see the cheetah sit on the elephant's head, because that's kind of what's happening. But so this plan, this game plan of kind of what's important, and what was I going to say?
I'm sorry, I just totally just. That's funny.
Something important on the wall, by the way, and we'll go into this more depth in the following weeks. There's a difference of how to use the wall from a leader or a follower. Leaders need strategy training, followers need more technical training. An 80-20 split that changes, meaning think of 80% of the wall for leaders, creative space.
Yeah.
You're supposed to innovate, things that are just a lot of blank canvas and innovation. 20% of what we would call tactical or technical guides. On the followership side, it flips.
Yeah.
You need some open creative space, 20%, but the majority of the wall needs to be tactical or technical guides. If it's a coder, if it's a salesperson, you need to be able to have those guides, because why have to memorize all of it on the spot?
We're saying, talking about in school, my son is struggling right now, especially in writing, and the idea of using the walls to put the alphabet, the sight words, like instead of, it's like take a blank piece of paper and write a story. Oh my God, is it so hard for somebody who's learning how to write to not have those visual cues up on the walls? Feels silly, right? And even at schools, I think they can get better at this, but even at home, how you set up the walls.
And when I think about these guides, I think about, for example, it could be a calendar. Sometimes we need to know looking far out, as well as key dates of events so we don't forget, as we have to get ready for certain big things up front, right? Or it could be an org chart of who else is in the company, team, whatever. It could be things that you daily or weekly reference. And you'll find if you don't reference it, change it. Sometimes we'll have like certain quotes, but mainly because we keep forgetting it. For the longest time, a quote I had on my wall was that it's a grave injustice to treat unequals equally. At any given point, when it comes to people, everyone isn't contributing at the same amount. So when you treat everyone with the same fairness, the unequal injustice is to those who contributed more. And that was so hard for me to actually reconcile. So I need it on the wall to remind myself, and then eventually became part of it, and so forth. So this is actually from this individual, right, that we helped change the wall setup, what she wrote to us. And I guess the main punchline was this, that it was different, right? Being able to write and then put it on the wall versus using a laptop or notepad, you can see what your thinking is. And then once the page went up on the wall, there was another page she had done in the morning, and then suddenly connections she had never seen start to come through even in the first day of using this tool. Then we got another note just yesterday morning. So MSR, I believe, is the monthly sales review. So a meeting that's been very stressful for her with her boss that occurs every month, a very unhappy meeting. But for the very first time, she basically killed it. She killed this meeting. And this is the meeting occurring, I mean, she's the decade plus executive, killed it and had things up on the wall. Like, and those are what I would call some of the tactical guides or even the creative thoughts. Like, why would you sit there trying to click through files and find it on the spot, and your screen, no matter how big it is, isn't a large enough canvas? And the part is that you need disparate parts you can see as you process and think.
Or to think, maybe I'll be calmer and I'll be more on point if I'm looking out the window, if I'm just calm, you know, if I'm just calm, I'll do better. And that's not true.
It's not true.
It doesn't happen because
Like
your mind
when-
is wandering.
now-
You're trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing? What should I be?
Now, you know what's interesting? I've heard from some people like saying, well, I'm working from home, right? I have a small house. I only have a bedroom I'm working out of, right? So if I put up stuff from a bedroom, I'll have mental stress, right? But here's the insight that maybe will help. If you have a lot of mental health issues and mental stress, it's because you have a lot of tangled knots in your head.
You're thinking
If
it
you
already.
don't get it out of your head, you'll never be able to get clearer and reduce mental stress. Meaning just because it's not on my walls and I close my eyes and I go to bed, right, does not mean I reduce mental stress. It gets worse. You need to be able to see it. Bringing it to light is the single biggest solution in reducing mental stress. So to be able to see it, and yes, it might feel stressful, but you'll see it's better to see it than not see it. Acting like, okay, don't think about it. You know, it's like, don't think about the pink elephant in the room. You think about it more. So even if it's bedroom, right? And if you really need a quiet window, then take a giant black sheet and cover it if you have to go to bed, but put up this knot up on the wall. When you put the knots up on the wall, you can't fix what you can't see. If it's not exposed, if it's hidden, you cannot fix it. And so to be able to start to unknot the tangle chaos we have in our heads, we need to be able to see it. And that wall is better than any therapist, because it's all the time, and that's how much we need it. We're doing a similar thing. This is, for those of you in the military, this is a 2-star admiral's office. And through the course of this last week, he's already changing this office. And if you think about this principal's desk, think about the classic office setup. Why is it you're sitting there and people say, oh, so I can meet more efficiently. You can pull up a chair and I can act like the boss or the principal as you come in. That's just built for industrial age versus I need a thinking war room. This is not a thinking war room. This has got fancy pictures. It's got the authority figure desk and whatnot. It's not built for that. So this change is happening rapidly as we speak. We're going to help review it at 3 o'clock as well.
Yes, we're moving the shelf behind the desk.
Oh yeah,
That's the key.
shelf behind
We're
the desk
moving that
out, right?
to use that as the key wall space. Right?
And the other part we had said was don't go nuts on whiteboards. These giant butcher block sheets, far better. Literally, it's a cost of probably less than $20 at any Staples to get those giant sheets plus markers. And the markers do matter. Do not write on these things in pen or pencil. You need to be able to see it from far away, which I'm going to walk you through real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know we're running really late. This was a slide from last week. We had shown about brain speed. And so there are 2 areas I want to jump into real quick. The idea of reducing your interruptions, because interruptions, when you have emails and ringers and whatnot, all the way to even like the top way to train brain speed is whiteboarding. And ideally with someone, even with a camera that you talk to as you do it. So this is something I just threw in because we had to find it. You know, in Outlook or emails, there's a little alert that keeps popping up every time you get an email and you're thinking of something and then something pops up and you realize it's a J. Crew sale or some other spam, or every now and then something that kind of emotionally rocks you. Turn it off because, you know, like very few emails, Slack messages, or even phone texts are ones that you literally must see real time. If there's something that urgent, they will call you. They will call you multiple times. Like you will see things change. Like, so if you go in Outlook, I think it's in File and Options, there's a thing for Mail, and at the bottom right, click that display alert off. Just trust me, you will see that you're not going to miss a lot and your life will get a lot calmer. And you will not have interruption in your thinking and flow continuously. I want to show this. This is actually Laura's first practice sheet on this. And I wanted to show this because this is what matters. Color matters. you're seeing just this is someone having fun with their crayons and just coloring everything. And I'll walk you through kind of why color matters a lot. One of our advisory board members is a guy named Aaron Patzer. Aaron Patzer founded and sold a company called Mint.com. He's known and talked about from Silicon Valley as arguably one of the best user interface design people who ever came out of Silicon Valley. Fairly young guy out of Princeton, very sharp guy. But what he taught us I love is what he called the squint test. The squint test is if you go back and squint at the sheet, what do you see? It should clearly be a hierarchy of something that stands out. When you do a throw up of colors like this, the squint test doesn't help you much at all. You can't see what you're supposed to see. Good user interfaces, good whiteboarding should be able to pass the squint test. So the hierarchy of what you're trying to say is clear. So what I want to show you really quick was this. I think this is the last part of this. I just want to show you this. This is the last part of the presentation.
Let me hold it for you.
Okay. So these giant sheets.
You know these big sheets, guys, right? It's staples.
3M makes them.
Some of them have grid, some of them don't. It doesn't really matter.
So I'm going to walk you through a couple of things. One is you will see almost all sheets we have, we draw a little purple line through this. And people ask, why do you do that? When you start to work on these sheets and you start to post-it note and tape stuff, this upper portion is waxy because the sheet's below. So if you stuck a whole bunch of stuff, the next morning you'll see all of it fall on the floor and you'll be like, oh my God, where did that go? By drawing this line, we know below this line, tape sticks, post-it note stick, above it, things fall off. Why we use purple? Purple is not a general color that's common. So it allows us to use a color and we use the space to say, okay, so how you can title it to whiteboard. And the other part we learned years ago from some of the best consulting firms is this. When you want someone to understand what you wrote, write in all caps. Even if you have horrible handwriting, writing in all caps is faster and easier to read. When you see words in smaller non-caps, it's harder to read. So when I think of what I write, when I want someone to read what I write in all caps. When I need something for my own edification, my mental note, I will do it actually smaller. So just for me to remember, because I can write messier, but the lowercase letter is faster to write. You might not be able to register and read it, but the caps is what I want you to read.
Yeah, in terms of the color blindness people are bringing up too, we know that people are like, this is the ideal setup where if you're not colorblind, you can see the red. It's not that you can't do this exercise, right? If you're colorblind.
So I would say, I don't have an answer on the colorblind one. I don't know, I'm sure there's a version that we can come up with at some point.
Yeah.
That one, I'm telling you right now, we have no expertise and do not have much knowledge there, but let's put those edge cases out. I think the general audience here, I don't believe is colorblind. So let's assume you're not colorblind and I'm telling you what to do. The edge case of colorblind we'll figure out at some point, which we haven't, so no knowledge there right now. The baseline color to use is black, right? So, almost everything you do, what you'll see is this. There is a dial down you need to do before you dial up. It's no different than a resiliency training. How do I dial down my psychological immune system or RABs before I dial up? And there's a sequence that matters. Now, the critical part is how you use green and red. Visually, green usually represents good, red represents bad. So what we want to do is use these colors specifically to represent good and bad.
See the usage or note the usage of semantics, which is the words and the letters with, figures, right? Shapes, because it helps you quickly show what you mean when you can use shapes, like in Pictionary. If you could use shapes, numbers, letters, use all of it, you'd get your point across faster. And you can do that because it's not Pictionary.
But also the thing you'll find is this, when you go and stick these in the wall, when you squint test it, your eyes will gravitate towards the red and the greens. You will see that the red and greens represent like good and bad, is not versus is, the wrong way to do it versus the right way to do it.
Right.
The other part is this, blue is a precious color. Blue is often used where insights tend to occur in hindsight. A lot of people believe that, oh, you know what? I can just have my insight and write just the best.
Right.
Like you need free canvas to just go viscerally and run at top speed. If you're watching what I'm doing, I'm reading, writing. So I am thinking, I am talking, and I'm writing at the same time. So what happens while doing this is this idea of practicing speed. And if we talk about doing everything with speed, right? I'm just using this as an example.
Yeah.
Like blue ends up being almost like the
highlighter in some way.
hindsight insight.
Yeah, hindsight.
And as you present something to someone and you're writing in black, what you'll find is even over video, as they observe, they'll ask a question or they'll have that look of confusion in their face. And you need to draw out what doesn't make sense. And as they explain it, you need to be able to practice, once again, writing in real time. So like if I can't think of a good example.
By the way, guys, this actually does, I can't underestimate, you can't underestimate how much it helps dial down all the LHFing that occurs in meetings, that everybody's slowing down, looking at each other, trying to have strategic conversation and good discussion. When everybody is looking at the same piece of paper or looking at the wall, it's amazing how that notion of feeling shoulder to shoulder, and you're looking at something together, we're all trying to make sense of it. Your brain will actually go faster than trying to look at someone's eyes and think, how do I say the right thing right now? What's the right thing to say? What's the smart thing to say? How do I, right? So it's amazing what that can do. Explain more of what dial down and dial up means.
I think most things you'll find that it's almost like, I always think of the analogy of going to a buffet. Before I usually we fill up our plates. I do all the time anyways. You need to dial down filling up your plate if you want to save some room for the good stuff. Oftentimes, if you want to put new rituals in place, discipline, you need to figure out what you dial down first before you add. Resiliency training, if you don't dial down your RABs, or red defense mechanism, you can't then up your training and going into conflict. So most things for human beings will have this notion of dialing down before dialing up.
So Chris is asking, is one sheet enough to prevent marker bleeding through the wall? Trying to prevent wifey being unhappy. Okay. Yeah.
So certain markers do bleed more. Most of these Sharpie markers do not bleed as much. It's
We've never had it bleed
thicker.
through the wall. These ones?
They generally don't. These generally don't.
We have the Expo.
If you really are concerned of that, just
do double sheets.
I was gonna say you can always get a paint job later if you have to, or when the wall is covered with all the sheets, I'm not sure they'll even see it ever, because that wall will be such an active war room of your mind.
We've never had it bleed through. But maybe there's a case where it could. I don't know. Whiteboard markers or regular markers? These are dry erase. These are actually whiteboard markers.
Yeah, we use whiteboard markers, which tend to bleed less, if anything. And then Sharpies sometimes when you do it, but like Sharpies can bleed sometimes. But
yeah,
I think generally speaking, you'll be surprised less than you think. The other part, by the way, it's fascinating. Have someone on camera watch you, zoom it, turn your camera onto the sheet, and go try to think, talk, and write at the same time. And you're going to find the first thing that occurs is hesitation. You will go to the thing and you will stop. That is a signal of your untrained muscle. Your mind is going at 3,000 words a minute. You can talk at 300, but you will probably write it roughly at 30 words a minute. Practice using symbols. I didn't put numbers in here, but practice using numbers, practice using semantics words, practice writing in caps, practice writing in lowercase, practice doing it with incredible speed. If we do academies, usually I fill a giant whiteboards up as I talk through an entire hour or 2 hour lecture. And the practice of doing that speeds up your brain. And what you will find is that when you go to the next meeting or next conflict or next thing, where you feel like, that feeling of everything's happening too fast, I can't think.
Yeah.
You've already trained to go at a higher speed of thinking, talking, writing. It will feel slower to you. It's counterintuitive notion of increasing brain speed, not being startled and being able to think through the craziest things happening is to train and practice with someone judging, watching you at a higher speed of all three things. That is actually what will get your comfort level up in thinking, writing, and talking. Level 3, that is whiteboarding, is the hardest, which is why we're going straight to that. And then, by the way, these sheets as they come are great things to put on your wall of stuff that's important. And so the combination of the mind setup and this kind of go hand in hand.
Does it help to give them crutches? I know this is like the, if you take an 8 by 11. So I will tell you, this is, I feel if you're not training in this, if you haven't been doing this, is much harder than you think once you start to do it. And especially if you're trying to think and speak and write at the same time to somebody else, even over Zoom. Sometimes it's really hard to go up to a beautiful brand new piece of butcher block paper and get it out. So one of the ways to create a crutch for yourself, if you need to, I've done this, right? Do this, is that you just tape 8x11 sheets on here, and you can actually get a lot of them on here. Just it's almost like, because if you make a mistake, you can be like, that thought, let me rip it off. So it can almost become small pieces of a whiteboard that you then will kind of get to a place.
You can usually get 3 and 3 across.
Then you get to a place where you can do it just on the sheet and just.
And then if you find even hesitating writing on a 8x11, then go to Post-it notes and stick the Post-it notes on the 8x11. And so, it's fascinating. Yeah. This is kind of crude, but it's the idea of you're trying to do a brain dump. And it's hard to dump in large open spaces. You go to the giant white canvas, you will struggle to take a brain dump. You go into a smaller space, it's easier. If that's hard, go Post-it note, it's easier.
Like it's easier for me to start here and just, I can do a brain dump on here. And sometimes what I need to do is do that first, then put it up. Yes. So I can look at it, it's up, and then I can start thinking about it, and then it becomes that.
And it's fascinating, the idea of using a marker in the sheet. If you make a mistake, you can tear it up, but who cares if you cross it out? But we don't like to make mistakes. We've been trained in the industrial age. Mm-hmm. So as a result of it, I can't even start until I think I have it perfectly set, right? Some people are bad at spatial geometry and whatnot.
Exactly. Like Simon's like, you have to be able to write in a straight line. Not true. You know what I mean? When you start,
they say optimists write up, pessimists write down.
Yeah, mine goes down.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You just gotta go. You just have to start doing it. This is the part where it's like, it's not gonna be perfect. It's gonna be ugly. You just have to start.
You have to start, and like I said, I think.
And Marie's talking about Post-it notes in an agile environment. We use Post-it notes for brain dumps. Yes, you can use Post-it notes, but recognize when it's up on your wall and you're a few feet away from it, you're gonna be like, what did I say on that Post-it note? So the key on the Post-it notes, even if it's the big ones, is to write with a Sharpie marker on it so you can see it. And then what we'll do is say we are talking about PRT and we're talking about RABs or whatever, and they need to dial down or whatever it is. We're writing that, and then we might. I'll go show you. Then we might end up like putting a square around it. If it's something we want to be able to see, if I just wrote that, I want to be able to see it. So I maybe put like a circle, like you need ways to, when it is up on the wall, you can remember that's a good thing, green. That's something we need to.
Right. Always practice the squint test.
Yeah.
Go back from the wall, anywhere from, 4, 5, 6 feet, maybe even 10 feet, and see what you can see. If you write in pencil, you can't see anything. And so the need to be able to step back and see what's happening in your brain, you need that objectivity to zoom out, which is why the markers matter, the Sharpies matter. If you write in pen and pencil, you won't be able to see it unless you're like 2 feet close. That loses objectivity.
So yes, Chris, we start with using the black marker first in that first phase of just dumping stuff out. But as you get practiced at it, you'll have the red and green real close, and you might start doing red and green. And then as you step back a little bit, you'll start doing blue. At some point, it all starts to happen all at once. But without question, there is you write it, and then you step back a little bit. Can I also say
D107376 said you can use erase boards if you want to avoid paper. Don't use erase boards.
Don't do that, yeah.
It's a lesson we've learned. Erase boards, because what you'll find is this, at some point, your wall will get cluttered. And people asked before, like, so when do I reset? When do I clean? The problem with erase boards is it's hard to clean the entire erase board. These sheets are great for several reasons. One is on the phone, you can take a picture and then tear the whole sheet up if you want, and then reprint just the 8x11 version. But the other part is this, it actually creates a filing structure, the size that's large enough, but not so large. You have these whiteboard issues where you have like this whole thought process, and then you need to clean the whiteboard, but there's like pockets of things you need to keep. So you're like, shoot, I have to now go erase around it. And then I have these random islands of ideas I have to keep. So then I have to rewrite those islands, and you'll see it's just the need to move fast, and you can't move fast because of these hiccups. We have found over the years, we have done our offices, whiteboard walls everywhere. We've done every kind, magnetic, regular. We found it's not worth it. This is far better for brain training, brain speed, and for practical purposes. These giant sheets create better discipline. Do not go electronic either. Do not think notes, because you need to be able to see the most important stuff in your life in front of you. So when you're working, and what's interesting about where our visual focal point is nowadays, it's our computer. It's our computer screen, our laptop screen, our iPad screen, which means where I look at from there kind of matters most. And for most of us, the right side is kind of the most important side to access quickly on the wall. So we will even go through the nuances over time of how to think of the right side versus the left side, and what to put up versus what to put at eye level.
Yeah.
So these are all things that
And
we'll
like
go to.
Lori is saying, the people to prove wrong list that we have, is that different when we brainstorm ideas? No, we put the people we're trying to prove wrong on an 8x11 and put it high up, but visible, but high up. It's not like in our working space, but it's up. Here are the people, my doubters, my believers, whatever it is, it goes up on the wall. I think there's some, Marie was asking about Post-it notes. Do you then take the Post-it notes and transfer it to a big sheet? Right? Like, so you have a bunch of, everybody has like these Post-it notes. They don't know what to do with all of these thoughts. You just put it up on a sheet. I feel like going
at
back
some
to
point, I would say yes.
presentation.
Because, you know, I
It's
know a
the
lot of you
8 by
have,
11
a
note.
lot of you have,
That's
yep,
step
because
one.
you can go 8x11, but you might need bigger.
I'm
but-
just saying that idea of step one is to actually on an 8x11 outline the big buckets of work you have. In the military, they call them big rocks, whatever it is. But I feel those big buckets of work, at some point you have to sit down and think about what are the big buckets of work, pieces of work you're working on. And then you create a sheet for each, a big sheet for each one. So maybe 8 of those Post-it notes, 4 of them are tied to some strategy you're working on in your business that you're like, it goes with that. And then these other 3 go over here. Like, you have to start separating, right? Not just everything in one place. I feel the separation is critical. Even if you just have 2 sheets up.
But you know,
everything is
like,
in
well,
one.
you know, the pain of Post-it notes is this, and a lot of us have all around a computer screen, all around our desk. Each thing represents a thought or a category. And it feels like, wait, I'm juggling 12 balls at the same time.
Yeah.
So grouping and sorting starts to matter. The giant sheet or 8x11 will start to group things in similar categories. And then there are little nuances. You have the Post-it note? That's interesting in Post-it notes. When you have the Post-it notes grouped, take the Post-it note and then stick the other thought underneath on it.
And then you can circle the whole thing if you want.
Or when you want to move it, you can move the whole thing as opposed to needing to rip off 6 Post-it notes.
Yeah.
You just take the top portion off and this whole thought moves to a different place. What the giant sheets represent are categories. Then within that, you can have subcategories and you can have individual thoughts. But category planning is important. That's the file structure.
I don't know, Monica, what your question, how to decide where to start with the dial downs. What do you mean by that? If you go ahead and unmute.
Oh,
Sorry,
finally. Yeah, I was trying to unmute. Yeah, what I was meaning is exactly what you just said, that those are like the categories, because I was like trying to figure out, I mean, what should be put on the paper, and then like how to put my brain down and dial down. But if I start thinking on categories, like categories that are the things that I should be doing or the things that are problematic, would that be an option?
So I'll give you an option of kind of, if you need a default category, what to do, use the Dev GPS. Future Outlook, and you can actually cut the slide in half. The upper part is the positive, the bottom part is the negative. Because you need to be able to visualize what success looks like, but what failure looks like. And it's a work in progress. Think of puzzling. People who do puzzles do it over time, and they look at it all the time in a central view. Then another sheet to the left can be the idea of looking backwards, which is basically trying to put in, and those might be in Post-it notes. Cut the board in half, once again, a trending signals of success, trending signals of failure. You need to be aware of both. So do you know, once again, over time, and you might even write a Post-it note with a date. So it's like today is 2/18. Because one of the hardest things to do, and people don't do well, is what they call leading metrics, not lagging. Lagging metrics, it's obvious to everyone that was success or failure. But the way you improve is to be able to be a master of reading the leading signals of failure or success. So leading signals show up differently. You'll see even from our class, the way that people start to pick up a discipline. Like when we saw, by the way, the executives were coaching, within 24 hours start to move their office, we're like, oh, that's a leading signal of what we taught really resonated. And then what we saw, the response in their business meeting and acting differently from the fear they had to the success, a leading signal. So those will go up in Post-it notes to show the trending trail. Everything is about watching trends of success and failure, because usually you find that it takes 7 successful events before you can strike a big, bold shot. The speed and bold come with 7 successful things in a row, 7 good calls. In the same way, when you watch negative things happen, accidents occur usually by the 6th or 7th bad thing in a row. So by watching the trending signals, those sheets can be very powerful. Then the main part I look at is kind of what's happening now. So the other 3 things in the now, discipline and the hard stuff. You could have a sheet on kind of my disciplines, right? My disciplines, you can go body if you want to work out or sleep and whatnot, but the more important part is the discipline in your mind and the brain. So how do you monitor that? The first discipline is just the count of how many times I do it, right? The ritual. Then it goes into having a goal of how to make it harder, right? So we can go into more details there, but another one can be the speed and bold is talking about big ideas. Having a sheet of my big ideas, right? My big, and those are dangerous too, because a big idea falling flat in your face can lead to a lot of disaster, a lot of people never listening to you again. So, but you need to puzzle that big idea. And as you watch these other signals moving, you'll know when to fire that shot and strike. You'll know when the iron's hot enough to strike, or you'll know when you feel the courage to strike. Then the other aspect is this idea of my practice ground for no LHF. One key I would do is think of people. I always think of people in a gated process, easiest to most difficult. As I deal with conflict, as I deal with crushing eggshells and whatnot, you know we all have people that are easy go-to people to just have truth, authenticity. And then you know as you tear up, there are ones that are really hard, but also higher cost, right? Typically for most of us, deciding to go have the first no LHF, tell all truth conversation with my boss who can determine my career, not the best thing in the world to do. Practice this before you get better, because it will come out of your mouth all the wrong way. But so like these sheets, you can have 5 sheets representative of the Dev GPS as a starting point.
Thanks for the question, Monica. Yeah, it's I'm just looking around all the faces. Some of you have been with us since like week 1. And I'm recognizing some of the people that I feel like they came back to us now. It's like really awesome stuff. And to see you guys in PRT and working really hard on yourselves. Now you've got this Dev GPS, which is, you can also try that and the wall stuff. I mean, hopefully your heads are spinning, but in a good way. This is like the tactical tips to help you get your brain on the wall and set yourself up.
Once you spend even 3 weeks doing this, you will say to yourself, how the hell did I run my life? How the hell did I do a job without having this aid? It literally is like, imagine going and driving in your car and someone decided to swipe your side mirrors out, your rear mirror out, right? Like literally, like you'd be like, I can't drive, right? I'm not aware of what's happening. You will literally have one of those, I cannot believe I operated with this without having this.
When you think about it, the idea of being a micro tactician, I mean, at home, I'm sure a lot of you, I remember our babysitter used to say, your family, you guys are so organized, right? You've got like a little whiteboard on the fridge for what groceries need to be ordered. All you have to do is add to that and it gets ordered every Thursday and delivered. Like, it's like, you can organize like to-do lists and tactical stuff in your home. But the idea that and there's things around the wall, there's calendars for kids' sports and different things. But to think that you could actually use your walls to help you do thinking work, not just a list of stuff that you have to check off, which I know feels very good, but to actually use it strategically to help you think.
No, and you know, I know once again, like, I think in some ways, suddenly your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, or whoever, roommate, it's like, what the hell, right? Fire hazard in my room and stuff. So much of this is tied to the urgent need of what you need. If you are perfectly happy right now and kind of career-wise happy, like there aren't big stresses and challenges, don't do this. Like, meaning when we do work and help the CIA and strategy or help the military, if there's no stress, don't make a war room, right?
Yeah.
Like, kind of like we should focus more on other things. Like, you know, like, but when there is stress, and this is the part, I know if you think about it, most of us have more stress. It's just held back, suppressed in our lives. Like, we generally need a war room. It could be on a home issue. It could be on a work issue. It could be on a career issue, right? It could be on a health issue. Like, it could be on a parental issue. It could be on a parenting issue. Like, it could be on older parents. It could be on younger parents. Like, and the need to be able to see what's happening and puzzle it, as opposed to, I'm just gonna, like, we underestimate like our brain and its ability to operate really well top speed with the chaotic nature and the schizo nature of what's in there. And you're wondering, and then when you go into, oh my God, I can't forget this, or people do that, oh, I have it in my files, right? I have like 5,000 files I can open, and I have to go find it. Good luck keeping your train of thought trying to find the file you're trying to find. And this is the part, you'll see when you sit back and you're like, God, I'm stressed about this, I'm not sure. Your eyes are darting for cues. And you don't want to read a poster that says be kind or calm down, right? You literally need to be able to see the cues of, that was a puzzle of kind of success and failure you'd be keeping in mind. I'm doing better than I thought, but there's some trending signals of bad that's coming up I got to watch out for. Or like, this discipline, this is the 4th week of it. I think it's important to notch it up now because it's kind of easy. Like, you need to be able to get the right cues and feed your brain with the right things in your life, not like, I'm going to look out into open space. For us right now, we have a building being constructed. If I looked out the window, the first thoughts, I wonder how our office construction is going. And then you're like, is it on time or is it not? Should I call Laura? Like, it's amazing how rapidly we get distracted. So people say, well, just close your eyes. Good luck in that dark terror, right? The internal terrorist we have, the #1 reason why adults cannot fall asleep. It triggers usually the minute you have children as parents or when you become a leader. Like, being responsible for other human beings is the #1 cause of not being able to shut down your brain and fall asleep, because you have to think of every signal forwards and backwards, right? God forbid you miss the early signals of problems, or God forbid you miss the signal of success and then double down when you needed to, or like, it's like kind of all the stuff of, it's in our heads. Future looking, backwards looking is all made up stuff in our head. And that stuff is what actually drives though what you do today. There's some great Kung Fu Panda quote about the future is mystery or history. I can't remember what it was, but it's really good. But everything, and they say the present is a gift. Learning how to act like and strike in the present is the key, but it is absolutely influenced by how we see into the future and how we see into the past. Don't leave it up for chance and just hope that your clouded, tangled brain just will do the right thing. Give it aids, right? Just literally, in hindsight, you'll be like, I do not understand how I operated without this.
Like, you feel like it's better to actually feel it. You can avoid it. Like, I don't want to look at it. I think that's how a lot of us operate. I don't want to look at it. I want to think about it. You know, it's the weekend. I just want to do it and not think about it. But the reality is you're thinking about it. So if you're thinking about it anyways and it's stressing you out and causing you anxiety, then put it on the walls. Yeah. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift.
That's why it's called the present.
It's called the present. I love it.
Like, because what you'll realize is this: nothing will change in your life until you action something in the present. Nothing will change. Today will become history the minute you hit tomorrow. And so when you start making the right actions, you'll see your trends looking backwards will change. And if you change your trends the right way, it will get you closer towards success and further away from failure when you visualize looking out. This is the connection. But instead, we've kind of operate with very fuzzy view of the future, a very fuzzy view and poorly biased view of the past. And we kind of think that we'll do it right. And then people say, just close your eyes, think positive, right? Think positive. Well, you know what? No amount of willpower and positive thinking will get you there. You need to act. You need to go do something. And that's the part where the connection comes in. So, all right. We went way over. We appreciate you guys staying with us. We will read the chat. We meant to go into more in the chat, but there's so much stuff to cover here. Use the feedback app too. Please, when we read all the stuff, we appreciate your thoughts, feedback. Our email is megachar@nextjump.com. You can email us. Also on the discussion board that's on Perks at Work, if you comment, I don't know if you guys get it, but it emails me, I think, within some hours after you write. So then it kind of pops in my email. So I click on it and then I respond in it, which I think is supposed to alert you as well, which I'm assuming works for engineers that just write. We're looking for signals of all sorts. And there was an interesting discussion we had coaching the executives last week. You know, this pandemic will absolutely end. I think we know this. It will end. The question of when it will can be anyone's guess, but it will end. And I know there's New York Times article recently about it feels like there's no end in sight, feels like forever going on. But here's another way to look at this pandemic. Never in your life as an adult will you get a free pass to not have to perform like we have right now. As a company, as an individual, never in your life will you get a free pass like this. Only, like literally, children get vacation, right? I'm envious of teachers who get the vacation at times. Like, but you just don't get that. Like, if you look at the public markets, companies are being rewarded for beating the low forecasts. Like, meaning they're 50% down in revenues, but they beat that low forecast, so they're being rewarded. Never in your life, even for us right now, our board and investors, and they'll listen to this, they're less hard on us right now because of the pandemic. So here's the interesting part. What will you do, right? If someone told you, I'm going to give you 6 months free pass in life, what would you do? Would you write a book? What would you do? What would you train? What discipline would you do that you don't have time for? What system upgrade could you do for yourself, for your team, your organization, that you would never have the time to do? This idea of whatever version you're in, get the next version. Yeah. Come out of the pandemic as V2 of Diddy or V2 of Ruth, right? Not accidental one time, but literally use this pandemic to train like hell and upgrade. So when you come out and everyone's like, oh, thank God I don't have to hibernate anymore, I'm out. Literally, you have been training like an Olympic athlete, a mental Olympic athlete ready to go tackle the greatest competition, which is brain power related, like upgrade. This is a free pass. And so I hope you train as aggressively and as diligently as we want you to. And if you have every excuse of, I don't have the funds, I don't have this and that, we're trying to make it as easy for you as possible. You can't get easier than free. It's ritualistic, and it is done with meeting new people, and it's only 1 hour a week, which is 2%, right? Join the workshops, right? Which you can see all the instructions how to do it. Ask friends, bring friends to the class too as well. This is kind of the entry point into almost everything out there. So,
Paula, put in the chat, what company do you work for? I'm curious, because I see you new. I love the newbies. I love the loyals too. I love all you guys. I'm just saying. I think that's obvious.
Megan likes all of you. I might not be the same, but
Children's Health, interesting, in Dallas, Texas. Okay, very cool. That's awesome.
Like, what's interesting about Simon Pierce saying I'm working 34 hours a week. You'll be surprised. This is the insight people don't realize. We talk to the who's of leaders in every organization, and they don't say work longer, work harder. What they desire is work smarter. Yeah. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean when someone saes work smarter? It almost seems condescending, like I must be an idiot. Work smarter, right? Like the reason why we don't work smarter is we don't know what the hell that means or what to do.
What to do.
We're breaking down the nuances to give you the tools and strategies to work smarter and to upgrade yourself, because right now, this is no longer the age of manpower and pure brute force. Having a larger force of headcount and longer hours does not do any, give me 10 more hours so I can get breakthrough innovation, won't make a difference if you do it the wrong way. You can innovate and have a breakthrough in 15 to 30 minutes if you do it the right way. You can go and work for 100-hour weeks and never get into the flow, or you can get into the floor in shorter amount of time. It's the age of brain power. It is no longer the age of physical manpower, woman power, manpower, whatever you want to call it. So going and lifting more weights, going and getting your heart rate higher, right? Learning to sleep longer, right? Eat healthier ain't going to be enough to succeed. You need that brain of yours, which they say is the greatest muscle. You need that thing to process faster. And the reality is it does run fast. Except we have trained ourselves from 100 years of setup in the industrial age to filter every thought that goes through. So a pipe that's supposed to go at full speed is going at 5% speed, 10% speed. So you need the space to, it's almost like having a really nice car and never knowing what it feels like to just let it run at top speed, right? You need the space because you'll see it kind of doesn't go as well as you thought in your head. And that's where then you need to adjust and train. And when you have other people doing it, it's a safe space. It's almost like you have I want to think of like you have Ferraris, but it's bumper car Ferraris.
Yeah.
So we're putting you in groups of 10 to go and bumper car around and start pressing the gas and realize that you can't do that much damage, right? And there are people there to help you in teams of 10. And we have coaches who have experience in this, try to guide you in top, right? And every week we're watching every signal to figure out what is kind of most needed.
Yeah.
So,
and you can email us too. You can tell us in this class as you come in every week, like we want to know what pieces are working, what's not working as you're trying things, like little nuances, like where, you know, this is our way of geeking out. We would like you to geek out with us on like the details of what's working and not working, even as much as like the walls and the Post-it notes and the markers, because it seems so, you know, trivial in many ways, but it's so critical. Like these little details really matter. So we want you to share that with us. So yes, next week, share with us, especially as you're trying stuff. If you're not trying it and want to criticize it, we're not as interested. We want you to try it. And then, you know, like get in the arena with us.
Now, Brene Brown says that well, which is, I do not care for feedback from those who are not in the arena. Get in the arena and just stick with it. Even for a few weeks, you will see the difference and literally will have one of those, I cannot believe that I didn't know this. No one taught me this. And I'm supposed to think and be creative and operate and manage the swirling schizo thoughts in my head with no aid except a computer screen I stare at. And no app in this is going to be enough. The physical wall, I'm telling you, watch when you're stuck, when you're stressed. Watch what happens with your eyes. It's darting all over the place, looking for something to fixate on. But we're not being deliberate about that. So,
you know what, Simon, don't go crazy watching the last 20 hours. I feel like the last few weeks of these classes, like we were trying to explain in the beginning, this breakthrough we've had. I really feel like the last few weeks, the breakthrough on, and there's some really great material in there, but I feel this Dev GPS and what we're building, how you get awareness and recognizing imbalances, and then how to set up, not mindset work, how to set up your mind is some of the best work. So I feel, don't stress yourself out about that. You can always go back and look at pieces of it, but I really feel like getting in the arena is more important. Setting this up and trying it is more important.
Very cool.
All right. We'll see you guys next.